When dinosaur fossils were first pulled from the ground, the appearance of the creatures was anyone's guess. And how they lived was beyond comprehension. But from Argentina to Wyoming, great discoveries and bold new thinking suggest these ancient creatures were faster, more agile, and more complex than once imagined. "65 million years after the last dinosaurs vanished, they're more popular than ever. They've escaped from museums and invaded our popular culture, spawning a renaissance of the dinosaurs." For over 150 million years, a group of animals unlike any today ruled our planet. The dinosaurs. Their great success demands that we understand them. But their remains are silent. Today, scientists like Jack Horner are struggling to find what they were really like. Horner is one of the paleontologists responsible for redefining our modern image of dinosaurs. His groundbreaking discoveries and keen insights have helped answer questions that have lingered for more than 100 years. His pioneer status attracts volunteers from all over the United States to Montana for his crash course in dinosaur excavation. The students live in traditional Native American teepees, designed to withstand howling winds that sweep off the nearby Rocky Mountains. Horner believes that the focus of paleontology is changing. Instead of settling for knowing what dinosaurs looked like, we now need to know how they lived.
In the old days, people were looking for display pieces. They were looking for things to put in museums. So they would go out, they would find a dinosaur, they were looking for individual dinosaurs, and they were looking for something big. So they'd go out, they'd find a dinosaur, they'd dig it up, they'd bring it back, they'd prepare it, they'd put it on display, and then they'd go look for another one. And they weren't doing science. It was more in line with sort of the P.T. Barnum spirit. Nowadays, most of us, I think, are very interested in how dinosaurs live.
In the 1970s, Horner's research led him to the debate over the link between dinosaurs and birds, an issue that's nagged paleontologists almost since the beginning of the science. As early as 1839, dinosaurs were classified as reptiles, even though some had hip bones like modern birds. Not much was made of the similarity until 1861, when an astonishing fossil was pulled from a German quarry. Named Archaeopteryx, it looked like a small dinosaur, but with one major difference: it had feathers. Some scientists would later declare it the missing link between birds and dinosaurs. But others refuted the idea because it lacked the specialized collarbone, a wishbone considered to be the fundamental trait of birds and their ancestors. The dinosaur bird theory gathered academic dust for 100 years. In 1978, Horner found some hard evidence to all but resolve it. A chance encounter in a Montana rock shop led him to the discovery of a lifetime. Horner and a colleague were in their first year as excavators when they stopped at a small fossil shop in Bynum, Montana, not far from the Canadian border. The owners were delighted when Horner was able to identify some of the fossils on display.
The bones that she had found turned out to be a large duck-billed dinosaur. And as I was leaving the shop, she said, "Oh, by the way, there are a couple little bones here I would like you to look at." And she pulled out two tiny little bones, both of which I immediately recognized as baby duck-billed dinosaur bones.
Horner was astonished. He knew how incredibly rare baby dinosaur bones were and how much could be learned by finding more. The shop owners agreed to close up early and take the dinosaur hunters to where the bones had been found. In pasture lands just east of the Rocky Mountains, they showed Horner the source. It would become the wellspring from which most of his future research would flow. He proceeded to uncover numerous bones of baby dinosaurs buried in a bowl-shaped depression that he determined was a nest. It was a historic find. The first nest of baby dinosaurs ever discovered. What's more, that bones belonged to a previously unknown kind of duck-billed dinosaur. Nearby, he discovered hundreds more bowl-shaped depressions and realized that he'd found an entire nesting area. Many of them held fossilized eggs. He called the new site Egg Mountain. Only once before had dinosaur eggs and nests of this scale been found. In 1923, the American Museum of Natural History in New York sent the flamboyant Roy Chapin Andrews on a lavish expedition to the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. The expedition found a total of 50 eggs, individually and in nests. They wrapped their treasures in camel hair and loaded them in crates to carry home. Horner's find was even more impressive. It yielded eggs, babies, and for the first time, actual dinosaur embryos inside their eggs, 70 to 80 million years after they were formed. The discoveries gave him the chance to study the development of dinosaurs from embryo to hatchling to adult. Much of his research focused on one question. After dinosaurs hatched, did they act more like birds or like reptiles? Reptiles emerge from the egg with strong legs and are able to fend for themselves right away. But hatchling birds are too weak to care for themselves. A parent must remain at the nest, feeding them until they can stand on their own, a significant behavioral difference. Horner suspected that at least some dinosaurs cared for their young, as birds do. He looked for evidence in the eggs and the bones of the baby dinosaurs. The eggs were deposited in clusters, and it often takes brute force to free them from the surrounding rock. A more delicate touch is used to scrape away the finer particles. Finally, the specimens are wrapped in burlap and plaster to be transported back to the museum for further study. In the lab, Horner and his colleagues began experiments to determine if baby dinosaurs could stand on their own when they emerged from their eggs. They needed to look at the structure of the hatchling's leg bones. Strong bones meant they could stand on their own and leave the nest like reptiles. Weak bones would suggest more helpless, bird-like behavior. Could a discovery combined with ingenuity bring us closer to understanding dinosaurs? It has before. Every discovery advances our knowledge of what the dinosaurs were really like, And it goes beyond science. The more dinosaur experts learn about these bizarre creatures, the more fascinating they become to the public. Throughout the world, hundreds of museums display thousands of dinosaur fossils to satisfy the growing interest. And if people can't get to the museum can sometimes come to them. DinoFest International is an annual exhibition of dinosaurs and ancient life from around the world. In 1996, in a 2-week period, nearly 200,000 people flocked to see prehistory come alive. They were joined by world-renowned dinosaur experts, artists, and merchandisers. DinoFest was the brainchild of paleontologist Don Wolberg at the Philadelphia Academy of Natural Sciences.
We have dinosaurs for the first time put in one place from every continent. So there are people interested in the wonderful animals from China, dinosaurs from Canada, US. Of course, T-Rex is extremely popular and unpopular, scares some kids.
Scaring kids and adults alike are the recent Jurassic Park movies, which have tallied the highest box office receipts of all time. But perhaps the most stunning example of the public's soaring fascination with dinosaurs was seen at Sotheby's. In 1997, the New York auction house put Sue, the most complete T-Rex skeleton yet found, on the block.
At $700,000, now bidding at $800,000, now bidding at $900,000, now bidding at $9. At $900,000, now bidding at $9. At $900,000 now, 2 bids at $1 million. At $1 million, now bidding at $1 million. Now $1.1 million. 5.4 million. Telephone up front. 5.5. 5.6. 5.7. 3 places. 5.7's in the center of the room still. It's up front then at $7,600,000. Fair warning then at $7,600,000. Up here. $7,600,000.
The highest bidder was the Field Museum in Chicago. For a single specimen, it spent $7.6 million. It was the most ever paid for a dinosaur. It seems that 65 million years after their extinction, dinosaurs are conquering the Earth again. Today, what remains of these once flourishing creatures is enough to draw huge crowds and excite the imaginations of scientists and the public alike.
If I were a dinosaur, which dinosaur would I want to be? The biggest one.
If I was a dinosaur, I think I would want to be Tyrannosaurus Rex.
I think I'd like to be a turtle and watch dinosaurs.
The Triceratops. A Brontosaurus. Maybe. T-Rex.
For me, they were the hook that captured me in a career in science. And among the topics I care about are dinosaur extinction, how they lived, what they ate, recreating worlds of the ancient past.
DinoFest is just one of the latest events that brings the dinosaurs world back to life. For over a century, scientists have displayed their discoveries to an admiring public, even as they struggled to understand what these creatures were really like from the first meager discoveries. The first public display of dinosaurs was in 1854. It occurred at Crystal Palace Park, just outside of London. Some 40,000 people came to see life-size sculptures of long-vanished creatures. On the banks of a man-made lake stood replicas of many ancient animals. And on islands lurked the most popular sculptures by far, the dinosaurs. Huge and hulking. For the first time ever, scientists had collaborated with artists to put flesh on their bones. Each reconstruction represented the best that science had to offer. It was thrilling and a bit strange to a public just getting used to the concept of extinction. Recreating three-dimensional sculptures from the bones of extinct animals had been a tremendous undertaking. English sculptor Benjamin Hawkins was hired to build the creatures under the supervision of scientists. But very few dinosaur bones had been found by 1853, so the sculptures required some educated guesswork. Hawkins used a mix of creatures as his models: lizards, crocodiles, and rhinoceros. He labored for years on the project. As it neared completion, he held an unusual dinner party. Distinguished guests were served inside the belly of an unfinished dinosaur model. Hawkins had good reason to celebrate. The Crystal Palace exhibition became the crowning glory of a new science that was just beginning to understand dinosaurs. Through the ages, people had probably always come across dinosaur fossils, but had no idea what they were. In the 3rd century AD, dinosaur bones discovered in China were thought to be the remains of dragons. Ancient Greeks believed they were from a race of giants. It wasn't until the 18th century that Europeans, on the brink of the Industrial Revolution, started to question what the strange bones found in their mines and quarries were all about. When the first bones were found, the idea of extinction and the age of the Earth were virtually unknown. No one understood where the bones could have come from or how old they were. But the work of a few leading scientists would soon provide an explanation. In 1799, French anatomist Georges Cuvier began comparing the newly discovered bones to those of living creatures. He noted similarities and declared the bones were very old and the animals they came from no longer existed. It was a radical idea that launched the science of paleontology, the study of ancient life. In 1818, Oxford professor William Buckland applied Cuvier's ideas to a partial skeleton he found in an English quarry. He noted the similarity to bones of modern reptiles and named this new creature Megalosaurus, or Great Lizard. 5 years later, English Dr. Gideon Mantell found a huge jaw. The teeth resembled those of an iguana, so he called the creature Iguanodon. As more discoveries came to light, English anatomist Richard Owen in 1841 published a paper in which he classified these new creatures in a single group called Dinosauria, meaning terrible lizards. From then on, they would be known as the Dinosaurs. Later, Owen would supervise Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins as he recreated the new discoveries at Crystal Palace. They were works of tremendous imagination, but were based on limited information and riddled with inaccuracies. Megalosaurus was shown as merely a scaled-up version of a generic reptile, ambling on 4 legs. Now we know it stood upright, a swift, 2-legged predator like T-Rex. Iguanodon was also shown as a 4-legged behemoth, with a spike on its nose. Today we know Iguanodon ran on 2 legs. The horn on its snout was actually a defensive spike protruding from its thumb. The sculptures, more fanciful than real, created an image of dinosaurs as giant, lumbering lizards. But the creators of the Crystal Palace exhibition did the best they could with the little information they had. In the following decade, the picture of dinosaurs would begin to change. Across the Atlantic, knowledge of dinosaurs grew with the discovery of more fossils. As settlers flooded the American West in the 1870s, fossils began turning up in the exposed sediments of the dry and barren regions called Badlands. Soon museums in the East sent prospectors to Wyoming and Montana to hunt dinosaurs. They came back with new and far more complete specimens than any found before. As the diggers brought in one new kind of dinosaur after another, scientists vied to classify and name them. The work became an obsession for paleontologist Othniel C. Marsh of Yale and Edward Drinker Cope of the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia. Both were extremely ambitious, and both were after the same thing: to outdo each other by discovering and identifying the most dinosaurs. Their bitter competition took many forms. In 1868, Marsh pointed out that Cope, in a scientific journal, had put the head of the giant sea reptile Elasmosaurus on the wrong end. Mortified by his mistake, enraged at Marsh, Cope tried to buy back all copies of the journal before they reached his peers. When a new fossil bed was uncovered in 1877 at Como Bluff, Wyoming, both Cope and Marsh sent crews to stake their claim. Rival prospectors were said to engage in fistfights, even smashing fossils in the opposing camp. On one expedition, Marsh hired 2 Army scouts as escorts. One of them was William F. Cody, better known as Buffalo Bill. As thorny as it was, the competition between Cope, Marsh, and other dinosaur hunters produced a huge trove of fossils. They uncovered many new species, producing a great leap in our knowledge of dinosaurs. Soon others would head west to dig up prehistory. One of these pioneers was Barnum Brown of the American Museum of Natural History in New York. In 1902, he discovered the bones and teeth of a giant carnivore. He sent his treasure back to the museum for study. So impressive were the bones that director Henry Fairfield Osborn dubbed the frightening new predator Tyrannosaurus rex, the tyrant lizard king. Beginning in 1897, the public image of the new discoveries was shaped by artist Charles Knight. Originally hired by Cope and Osborn to portray dinosaurs in scientific journals, Knight was soon commissioned to paint reconstructions of the beasts for magazines and museums. Early in his career, Cope and Osborn asked him to paint and sculpt their dinosaurs as agile and active, running, jumping, and fighting. Quite a change from the Crystal Palace dinosaurs. By the 1920s, the idea of dinosaurs as quick and dynamic caught Hollywood's imagination, as seen in The Lost World in 1925. The depiction, though loosely based on scientific theory, was probably chosen more for its thrill potential. By the 1940s, for some unknown reason, science had returned to its previous view of dinosaurs as slow-moving, cold-blooded, and dim-witted. Knight reflected this view in 1942, when he wrote and illustrated an article for National Geographic magazine. He described the dinosaurs as harmless and stupid, and showed them lumbering across the landscape, dragging their tails or wallowing in swamps. Soon, pop culture would embrace that image. Moronic, plodding dinosaurs began turning up around every corner. But in the last 20 years, our knowledge has soared with the bounty of new fossils. In the 1960s, a fresh crop of paleontologists was making new discoveries and re-examining old assumptions. What they found led them to question the notion of dinosaurs as lumbering beasts. Blazing the path was a brash young paleontologist named Bob Bakker. In 1969, he began arguing that although dinosaurs shared some features of slow-moving, cold-blooded reptiles, anatomically, they looked more like agile, warm-blooded animals. Nearly 30 years later, he continues to find evidence to support his ideas. Like this trackway in central Wyoming, where a herd of dinosaurs once crossed a mudflat. Their tracks are now preserved in stone.
This is the front paw of a great 10-ton brontosaur squishing in and pushing up the mud as it walked. No claw print. The thumb would be there. Great big claw held off the ground. And behind it, the much larger hind paw carrying 3 times as much weight with 3 claws. 1, 2, 3. All chisel-edged, facing outwards. And there are probably several hundred of these guys all walking the same direction. These tracks go 100 yards that way, 50 yards that way. This was one big herd, adults and babies. Crisscrossing the trackways of the brontosaur herd are meat-eating dinosaurs. Some little ones maybe this tall, roughly the weight of a coyote, and some taller, roughly the weight of a big mountain lion, 300-400 pounds. What they were doing, I don't know, but some of them were moving pretty fast. Some of them were going around back the brontosaur herd, some cutting in the front, probably trying to keep out of the way, maybe looking for the small fry, stirred up by these, this enormous weight of unstoppable herbivores.
From the spacing of their prints, Bakker has determined the meat-eating dinosaurs were as fast and agile as mammals.
There's a simple equation that lets you calculate how fast these dinos were going, if you know how tall they were and how long the stride was. Now this meat eater, it's about as tall as I was. Look at this. Can barely do that. I can't walk comfortably with that stride. This guy was running. He was going about 14 miles an hour. Some of the tracks that have been found nearby indicate speeds of up to 40 miles an hour in spurts, and the average speed of all these meat eaters is 7 miles an hour. That's a good clip. That's the clip that coyotes and wolves and hunting dogs and hyenas use when they're scurrying around looking for food. That's a hot-blooded pace.
In 1986, Bakker presented his radical ideas to the public in his book, The Dinosaur Heresies. In it, he illustrated his theories with his own drawings, showing how the anatomy of the dinosaurs made them faster and more agile than reptiles. It was groundbreaking and controversial, but slowly won over many of his critics. He believes past notions about dinosaurs are the result of scientists trying to fill in the missing pieces of a complex puzzle.
This is a wonderful head. This is the head of a kind of brontosaur. This is the head that was on Brontosaurus itself in all the big movies, King Kong, the original Lost World, 1925. This head is a powerful head. It's got these huge teeth here for crushing plants and leaves, a big nostril for hooting, pretty big eye to a wonderful head. And when I grew up and the Brontosaurus skeleton in New York, this wonderful skeleton from Wyoming, this head was on it. It's a wonderful head, but it's the wrong head.
How did early dinosaur experts put the wrong head on the brontosaur? When big dinosaurs died, their remains were often torn apart by scavengers or scattered by floods. Add millions of years on a shifting Earth, and it's easy to see why heads and bodies often went their separate ways.
So it's very rare to find a head, and then a neck, and then a torso, and a tail. You usually find mixed up parts. The first Brontosaurus didn't have a head, but there was a big head from another quarry nearby. Take the body from quarry A, the head from quarry B, put them together. Made sense. They fit pretty good. It was dead wrong.
But as more fossils were discovered, scientists realized their mistake and replaced Brontosaurus heads in their museums. Bakker's hunting ground is Como Bluff in central Wyoming. He returns every summer to search for more dinosaur relics. He's joined by groups of graduate students hoping to make their mark in the field. They'll likely have little to show after a long day in the blistering heat. It's the possibilities that drive them on. The chance to discover a completely new dinosaur, or a complete skull or skeleton. If they're lucky, their finds will add to the continuing wealth of fossils that began in the early 1800s. As the evidence accumulates, new theories are formed, old ones discarded. From sluggish behemoths to fleet-footed upright racers. From cold-blooded to warm-blooded, dinosaurs continue to fascinate as our picture of them becomes clearer. While Bakker was redefining our ideas about the creatures, Jack Horner was in his lab, solving the most compelling dinosaur mystery of all. At Egg Mountain in Montana, Jack Horner's dinosaur eggs provided an opportunity to test whether dinosaurs were bird-like or reptilian. He took his treasure to the Museum of the Rockies in Bozeman and devised an experiment. The answer to his question was written on the bones of the dinosaur hatchlings. If the leg bones were weak, the baby dinosaurs would need parental help, indicating bird-like behavior. But before measuring the strength of the bones, Horner needed to determine which of his specimens were embryos and which were just hatched. A computer enabled him to visualize the largest embryo that could fit inside the egg. Any that couldn't fit must have been hatchlings. Once he identified a hatchling leg bone, he cut a thin cross-section of it. From its microscopic structure, he could determine if it would have been strong enough to bear the creature's weight. He concluded these baby dinosaurs were too weak to stand on their own. They depended on their parents to care for them. Bird-like behavior, never heard of in dinosaurs before. He appropriately named the new dinosaur Maiasaur, the good mother lizard. With his new knowledge about Maiasaur behavior, Horner headed back to Egg Mountain. After years of digging, he concluded that 80 million years ago, the surrounding area was a giant dinosaur nursery. Adult Maiasaurs must have shuttled back and forth to feed their young. It would have been as crowded as the nesting colonies of many seabirds today.
We know they nested in colonies, and some of the nests that we have looks as though the nests were 25, about the length of an average adult apart from one another, which is similar to birds.
From his study of nearby sediments, Horner believes Egg Mountain was once an ancient island, surrounded by a shallow lake, which helped protect the babies from predators. Dinosaurs may have waded out to the island to lay eggs and tend to their young until they were strong enough to leave. Through the accumulation of fossils and the shrewd analysis of paleontologists such as Horner and Bakker, the uniqueness and diversity of the dinosaurs is becoming ever clearer. They were bird-like without being birds, reptilian without being reptiles. The question remains, When did these innovations begin? The answer may lie in the Valley of the Moon. Today, 65 million years after the last dinosaurs disappeared, their fossilized bones are being unearthed. Though the rocks are slow to give up their treasures, scientists have discovered over 330 members of the dinosaur clan. On average, a new type of dinosaur is named every 7 weeks. At the foot of the Andes Mountains in Argentina lies a rugged, barren landscape known as Ischigualasto. In English, the Valley of the Moon. 230 million years ago, this was a dense and shady forest. Stalking through it were small but menacing creatures, the first known dinosaurs. Buried here, along with their bones, is the secret of their dominance. Isolated in the desolate beauty of this barren Argentine landscape, a team of dinosaur hunters hopes to unlock the mysteries of dinosaur evolution. Ischigualasto, the Valley of the Moon, is one of the most productive fossil quarries in the world. Erosion caused by wind and rain, combined with a seasonally dry climate, have exposed layers of sediment dating back almost 300 million years. From a central camp, 80 miles from the nearest town, the team, led by American paleontologist William Sill of the University of San Juan in Argentina, makes daily expeditions to other parts of this 105,000-acre region. Sill has explored this valley for 25 years. It's one of the best places in the world to study the roots of dinosaur evolution and understand what made dinosaurs unique among the other creatures that shared the planet.
This valley is just about the only place in the world where you have a complete sequence of sediments that have fossils in them and that show the story of the origin of the dinosaurs. And that's very rare, very hard to find.
Descending through one of the valley's many canyons, Sill and his colleagues go back millions of years. Each layer of sediment that surrounds them was laid down at a different point in the Earth's history. To understand why the dinosaurs rose to dominance, they must go back to sediments some 230 million years old. It's the first of 3 geologic periods in which the dinosaurs lived, known as the Triassic. It lasted from 248 to 205 million years ago. The middle period is the Jurassic, from 205 to 144 million years ago. It was dominated by the largest known dinosaurs, the sauropods. The last period was the Cretaceous, beginning 144 million years ago. It gave rise to Tyrannosaurus rex, Triceratops, and Velociraptor. Then, 65 million years ago, the Cretaceous ended, and the dinosaurs mysteriously vanished. Dinosaurs were already becoming the dominant species by the middle of the Triassic. To discover the world as it existed when they first appeared, Sill digs in sediments just before that time. The dominant creatures of this earlier period were reptiles that had begun to acquire some features of modern-day mammals. In the Valley of the Moon, one of the most common of these mammal-like reptiles was the cynodont.
This is the skull of a cynodont, one of the mammal-like reptiles, very common here, possibly an omnivore, probably a vegetarian. When you look at the skull, this is how we find them. And it doesn't look like much at first, but if you look closely, you can see the outline of the eyes here, the snout down here, and back here, the large temporal openings where the muscles that pull the jaw together came up through. And here's actually part of the lower jaw sticking up through this opening. Now these were on the line to mammals. They have some of the characteristics of mammals.
Mammal-like reptiles sprawled low to the ground like reptiles, with larger brains and complex teeth like mammals. They seemed to be well on their way to becoming the dominant animals that mammals are today. But then their future was jeopardized. To find out how, Sill takes his expedition higher up the eastern slope at Ishigolasto. The Red Cliffs hold sediments from the final years of the Triassic period. Here, mammal-like reptile fossils are almost non-existent. In their place are the bones of a new kind of creature, the dinosaur. What happened? Part of the answer comes from one of the earliest dinosaurs found here, Herrerasaurus, dating from 225 million years ago. It had all the tools necessary to trounce its rivals, the mammal-like reptiles. It was a 10-foot-long, 500-pound meat-eater. Most remarkable were its legs. Its unique knee and hip joints allowed it to move on 2 feet, a bipedal stance that gave it the agility and speed to surpass the low-slung, mammal-like reptiles. It also freed up its forelimbs.
He was bipedal, so his forelimbs were used for grasping, raking, tearing apart the prey.
In addition to its large claws, the skull and teeth of Herrerasaurus made it a formidable predator.
The things that make him a good dinosaur are these big teeth with serrated edges like a steak knife. And of course the major feature is this secondary jaw joint right here, a sliding jaw joint that allows the tooth-bearing part of the lower jaw to open independently of the rest of the lower jaw that opens from back here. This would have increased the gape of the animal by about 30 degrees and allowed him to manipulate prey up front while still holding tight to it with the rear of the jaw.
Puncture wounds on the skull of Herrerasaurus are battle scars, apparently from a fight with one of its own.
From the size of the tooth marks on his skull, here we can see 1 or 2 of them. Puncture wounds. There's another puncture wound down here. From the size of these, it looks like it was the same critter. They may have been fighting over a killed prey.
At the time it was discovered, Herrerasaurus was the most primitive dinosaur ever found. But since it had already developed features similar to later meat-eating dinosaurs, it couldn't have been the first. Instead, it was believed to have been a very early stage in the evolution of carnivorous dinosaurs like Tyrannosaurus rex. The search continued for an even more primitive dinosaur. In October 1991, one of Sill's graduate students, Ricardo Martinez, found one. His team uncovered the bones of a dinosaur roughly 3 feet long, barely the size of a dog. It was found in sediments 228 million years old, practically the dawn of the dinosaur age. It was named Eoraptor, the Dawn Stealer. Since then, Sill's group has found 6 more.
This is a skull of Eoraptor, tremendously important in the history of dinosaurs, because the teeth of this shows that it is a carnivorous dinosaur. The high, narrow skull, the large orbits tell us that it was an active predator. And one of the great things that tells us of its possible ancestor of all the carnivorous dinosaurs is this incipient jaw joint the second joint that allows it to manipulate prey. And that's a major characteristic of all of the later carnivorous dinosaurs. But it also contains the primitive features in the palate. It still has the old primitive teeth. So here we have what I consider to be an ideal ancestor for the later carnivorous dinosaurs.
Living just before Herrerasaurus, Eoraptor had similar features, including a bipedal stance and serrated teeth. But its sliding jaw joint was much less developed. Even so, Sill believes it was a menacing predator that could overpower the mammal-like reptiles.
He was fast, he was agile, and he was probably very vicious. Judging from modern crocodiles and birds, even, you know, if you've seen a rooster, or if you can imagine an ostrich who is a vicious predator with big teeth and claws instead of wings, chasing down a pig or some other animal across the plains, that's probably as close as we can come to visualizing Eoraptor as a predator.
Eoraptor's features were similar to those of Herrerasaurus, but more primitive. Double-jointed jaws, serrated teeth, and an agile stance were too much for the slower, bigger-brained mammal-like reptiles to compete with. By the end of the Triassic period, dinosaurs had replaced them as the dominant animals.
The dinosaurs were faster, were more agile, and were tremendous predators. In this case, it's a question of being fast or being smart, and the smart guys lost.
Sill also discovered that the early meat-eaters had already developed hollow bones, a trait shared by modern birds. They were swift, light, bipedal killers. They cleared the path, allowing later dinosaurs to diversify, grow exponentially in size, and outcompete all other animals on land. This image of dinosaurs is far removed from the picture of them as oversized reptiles, first put forward at London's Crystal Palace Park in 1854. Science once pigeonholed dinosaurs as reptiles, but today we're seeing they shared features with birds and mammals too. They also had their own traits, unmatched by any living animals. Our growing knowledge of dinosaur behavior is now making it possible to bring these creatures back alive. Generations of dinosaur scientists have seen their discoveries transformed into public attractions that bring ancient worlds back to life. Today's version is a theme park being created by Walt Disney Imagineering. Engineers and artists are taking everything we currently know about dinosaurs and making them almost as real as they were 100 million years ago. According to science liaison Casey Brenna, the job still leaves room for interpretation.
One of the challenges of recreating an extinct species of which we only have bones to work with today is interpreting what their body motions, skin colors, and behavior will be. And we find that utilizing, of course, nature as it exists today, and with the new knowledge that probably birds are related to dinosaurs if they aren't actually dinosaurs, has given artists lots of inspiration in how dinosaurs would look, how they would act and behave.
Like their counterparts 150 years ago, dinosaur artists mixed scientific fact with fiction. But today, they have more science to work with. Scientists have found impressions of dinosaur skin, but no clues as to color. For a long time, artists picture them a dull gray. Since it's now believed that dinosaurs are related to birds, artists feel free to use more vibrant colors. Disney's robotic Styracosaurus, a relative of Triceratops, has also gained from the new paleontology. It was once perceived as a lumbering animal, with a huge head stiffly mounted on its body, and front legs splayed to the side like a lizard's. Recent studies show that its head was connected with the limber ball and socket joint. The animal's neck muscles could toss the head in any direction. Though we're getting closer to knowing how dinosaurs lived, moved, and acted, we're still a long way from knowing everything about them, but we're on the right track. 19th century scientists greatly expanded dinosaur science. More recently, men like Jack Horner and Robert Bacher have done the same. Inevitably, the discoveries and theories of today will be disputed in the future. But one of the new ideas is not likely to change: that far from being giant reptiles, dinosaurs were among the most complex, diverse, and successful creatures that ever existed.